Good morning, welcome everybody. We're going through getting back to work. Going to be talking today about key dates and what we should be continue doing, the immediate and long-term planning and what may change. All that we're hopefully going to have in front of you now. Key dates for England and Wales, as we can read there. Some of it's already started for motorcycle lessons and CBT. Buses have already started doing their sessions and retesting. The 12th is a big day when theory test centres open. That's the day for public buildings to open. So theory test centres will be open for all candidates, including Part 1 tests. And on the 12th of April, also is car, motorcycle, lorry, minibus lessons restart, and testing for motorcycle, lorry and minibuses on the 12th as well. Our testing doesn't take place until the 22nd. Instructor testing as well for Parts 2, Part 3, and full standards check all takes place again from the 22nd onwards. Scotland, they're slightly behind. They're doing a restart on the 26th. There's a bit of confusion when that is being confirmed, because on Tuesday, Nicola Sturgeon insisted that there was going to be another review on the 20th, but for some reason, the national press are stating it's the 19th. So we're not sure what day that review really is, but it will depend on the review date as to whether the 26th takes place. Just like we had here in England and Wales, where the 5th was the review date as to whether the 12th would take place. So Scotland has got to wait a little bit longer for the review. Northern Ireland, the review for anything, we've got no information of any category of vehicle going back in Northern Ireland. The review for that is the 15th. One thing to say about Scotland as well is the information we have from the DVSA has been very sketchy on category A, C and D. It mentioned all about cars, etc., and testing will take place. All it says is that driving lessons can potentially start on the 26th. So we're not sure if that includes the lorries and the buses, or whether that's going to start earlier like it did here in England and Wales. So I'm afraid we can't quite give you the update on that yet. All we have from Scotland is what's on the screen in front of us now. If we can move on, please, Tom. Right, so what should we be doing? Well, we've been through the program of going back to work, and we've given loads of advice over the last so many months, 8 or 9 months, when we came out of the first lockdown about what should be done. And we've taken the information from other parts of industry and from the reviews by the medical advisors to the government. And we must ensure that we continue with all of the training protocols that are in place by the industry. Now, this is training old protocols. I say we've got some of that from industry itself and from the NHS England, is it called, where guidance has been given for cleaning in a non-healthcare setting. So some of our information has come from that. Some has come from Professor Van Tam and the other medical advisor to our industry as well. And we've put together some training protocols with NASP, so that they're agreed with the DVSA as well as to how we should be keeping the vehicle clean and what was required for a vehicle for the driving test to take place as well. So the safe training protocols, which we have got on the driving.org website, I think it is where the key, the post-lockdown toolkit is. That is a learning environment, as it were, where we are able to, everybody's able to get into looking at risk assessing and ensuring that they can keep the environment clear as much as possible of these aerosols. So aerosols are very, very, very tiny droplets of contagion, which is 1,000. An aerosol is 1,200 times smaller than a droplet. So it's very, very light, has no mass, hangs in the air for an incredibly long time, and it just floats in the air up with air currents and heat in a vehicle until the vehicle cools enough for it to settle onto a surface. So we do have to have ventilation in the vehicle, which is one of the reasons why the DVSA are insisting on it as well. And we do have to do a very rigid wipe down between sessions, but also a deep clean at least once a week, which should be done really by you, the individual, as opposed to a valeting firm. Because if you're using a valeting firm, normally you go to a place like Tesco and they've got 4 or 5 people who jump in your car, get done as quick as they can, but that's 4 or 5 households that's now gone into the environment of your vehicle, and that environment, all the air in your vehicle inside the 4 doors is known as a reservoir. So that reservoir is effectively getting contaminated, and you don't want contaminants in there. You want the clean, as clean as possible. So deep clean, wipe downs, ventilation. And what we're recommending you do now is wear masks if possible, due to the evidence that's come out from Spain, which came out last week, of the situation where the aerosols are now known to be suspending in the air for longer and being of a contagious nature longer than was first thought. So it is definitely a 72-hour situation that these pathogens, as they're called, are susceptible to be able to continue doing their nasty stuff by being on surfaces and on a mucous membrane. Now, a mucous membrane is normally your nose or your eyes, but it can be on skin that is damaged. So for instance, sunburn, rashes, cuts and abrasions, that the aerosols can land on there, and if you then scratch it and then touch your mouth or touch your eyes or your nose, it can be ingested into the body this way. Just landing on your skin in a normal way, providing you wash your hands often enough, and you can wash your forearms, which they can do in a sterile environment at the hospitals, that's okay. But being in the car, we have a bit more difficulty doing that. So ideally, we could, for the foreseeable future, perhaps decide to wear long sleeves and be in trousers rather than in shorts or in short sleeve, in t-shirts, etc., for the time being, until we've got a handle with the inoculations, vaccinations, whatever you want to call them, helping to keep everything at bay. So cleaning is really important. PPE while you're cleaning, use an overall and gloves, and then get rid of all that stuff when you finish cleaning. Be careful what you use for cleaning your vehicle with. It needs to be antiviral. We have mentioned in the past of using bleach-free disinfectant. That's okay, providing the surfaces you're wiping will deal with that. But if you're not sure, don't be afraid to go into the car showroom which sells your type of vehicle and go to them and say, look, you know, if you've got an aftercare sales that can advise me on how to keep these vehicles clean as it's a driving school car in a non-healthcare setting, have you got any idea of what we should be using, materials should be using on this particular finish of vehicle? I recommend that you do that if you can't find any other way of finding information. Communicate with your pupils. It's really important you do. It's very important that we understand the environment that the pupils are coming from, because we must protect the reservoir. Now, I'm going to have to go into a bit of legal stuff here now for you, really. Every single one of you driving instructors own a business or are franchised to a business. The owners that own the business must have a health and safety policy, but so do the franchisees, because you're all self-employed. It has to be written down if there are more than 5 people working for the environment. It doesn't have to be written down for any smaller organization, but it must exist. Now, you have a duty of care that the students you've got getting into your car are not employees, but under the health and safety at work regulations, you have got to maintain a safe working environment for anybody who comes into that environment, whether it be an employee or a member of the public, because your students are members of the public that have reasonable access to your work environment. You have a legal obligation to do this. So we have got to ensure that we keep that environment as clean as we can. So it means keeping the reservoir as clean as possible. So communication with your pupils is now key. In the toolkit and in the COVID mark that we have, there is information on what you should be doing, the toolkit especially, on what you need to put in place in terms of ensuring you have an audit trail to show that you are doing what is reasonably practicable to keep the vehicle as clean as possible. It's important you do this now, because we have got situations where, although these tests exist, the what they call it, so the lateral flow test, which is known as LFD, and the other one I've got written down here, PCR tests, they might be available, but you cannot force anybody to take one because you don't have any authority to do so. However, what you can do is you can actually stipulate that you would like to see the correct result for a test that's been done within 72 hours of a lesson. So you're not forcing the person to take the test, you're giving them a choice as to whether they want to do the test and continue with their driving lessons with you, because you have got to ensure that environment is safe, not just for that person, but for all the other pupils that are going to put aerosols into that reservoir, and also what you're going to take out of that reservoir going into your household to protect your own family. So it's very important that we have the track record of the health and safety, which means that we've done the cleaning of the vehicle for the deep clean. We have got a system in place of communicating with the students, put into terms and conditions, or whatever you want to call it, about asking for the correct result for tests, without telling them they've got to take them, because you can't tell them they've got to take them. But you can say, you know, we would need to make sure you've got the result. I need to see results of tests to ensure that everything's okay. And also phone them 24 hours before, just to make sure that symptoms aren't starting to brew, despite the fact they could have taken the test the day before. And that way it's going to stop you having an unnecessary journey and meeting them at the doorstep or outside the car when they clearly don't look very well. So if you can write all this down, what you've done with your cleaning regime, you write down everything you're doing in terms of the risk management, the communications you have, and that you've got in your conditions that you ideally want to see these results, then if anything untoward came and it had to go to a court and a judge was to look at it, you've done, there's no way that they could ever say that you haven't done what's reasonably practicable to keep that environment clean. And this is what you've got to do to protect yourselves now on this type of, on this, you've got to start thinking this way now. It's no longer as a kind of driving instructor industry, be Miss Daisy, come down, come and sit in the car, have a chat and have a drive around. That's all finished with now. Those days are over. We've now got to start being very responsible on ensuring that our vehicles are work environments, and legally we have got to do what's reasonably practical to keep them safe, and that includes health-wise, as well as making sure the vehicle is correctly steered and at the correct speed on the road. So there's another area we have to broach now and make sure that we do this properly. Ending to our Carly.
No, I think you've covered it all very well there, Howard.
All right. We'll do questions at the end. We've got some questions brewing and we'll answer them. So if we can move on, please, Tom. So immediate and long-term planning. In 10 days' time, we'll be able to do driving tests from the 12th. Sorry, I've got this wrong. Beg your pardon. When it comes to doing isolation, the isolation times now are 10 days for anybody who comes up with symptoms. So if you have someone that says they don't feel very well, then they should be taking a PCR test because they have symptoms for, possibly have symptoms for COVID. If they are wishing to give you the information of tests, these tests are now attainable from outlets from tomorrow, the 9th. The kids that are at school, the youngsters are at secondary school, and I don't know about college, but it's definitely secondary school. They are being urged to take 2 tests a week anyway as part of school. So you won't be so hard trying to get the evidence from those people because they're already doing them. They're doing them quite willingly. But when it comes to the more older generation, you might have to be quite diplomatic on how you get them to do them and say, look, you know, we do need to do this because that way you will be protecting my clients who you haven't even met, but we all have to work together, just like we do as a complete country in order to try and put this thing at bay. Otherwise, we could end up with the France and Italy situation washing up on our shores, and they've just gone in for their third lockdown, and they are struggling to contain, and we don't want to be in that situation again. Admittedly, we are further ahead than they are with the vaccinations, but in order to keep on top of this, we've got a responsibility now to try and control. Everyone individual has to try to control what they are now going to be doing. If we're going to start to go through the unlock, we really cannot afford to get complacent. So 10 days for pupils to get trained up with imminent test bookings as from the 12th, which the DVSA asked us for a strategy a few months ago now and built that in. So we're quite grateful they did listen. Driving test waiting times, perhaps Carly may have a better idea of that, but the test times at the moment, I'm getting feedback from ADIs at the moment, is end of September, beginning of October, our waiting time. So with this 10-day of imminent booking tests, you really need to concentrate on the people who've got tests that are imminent, because they are going to have an awful long wait for a driving test. And you've got to remember now, they are going to be under a lot of nerves and stress now, because this is a big thing. If they don't get this test now, they've got a very, very long wait. And some of these people have waited since March last year anyway. So it's really is a crunch time for them. So get them prepared. The DVSA have mentioned several times to us unofficially that ideally they would like to see students come up to test with about 20% more ability than they actually need to cope with nerves. And that's probably never more so than now. With these long waiting times, these students will deflate very quickly indeed if they don't get through this test. So really we have a responsibility to try and get them ready. So you may have 25 students on your books, but only 6 have got tests within the next month. Then I would, if I was running a driving school still, then I would be saying, right, you 6, we're going to concentrate on you. I might take 6 or 8 students only and say, right, can you others wait for another week or 2, concentrate on the 6 to 8, give them the best possible chance to get through, and then start dealing with the rest of the bookings afterwards, who aren't quite so urgent for their training for their tests. The backlog of learners, we normally, due to the nature of the birth rates, if we go back 17 years, year on year, we tend to find that we bounce between 16 and 17 new customers per ADI every year. That's what it works out as, which is, it's not, I mean, it's not going to sustain you for an entire year. You obviously have to get other business as well. But at the moment, with the backlog and the fact that we've done very, very little training in a year, and we've had another lot of 17-year-olds that have now entered the market as far as we're concerned, and I know we're not all 17-year-olds, you know, we've got other people as well, but in terms of new blood coming into the arena for training, with this extra year, we're now looking at an average of 24 to 25 learners per ADI. So this means that you've got, this is per year. So this means that this has gone up quite significantly now for the amount of available work that is out there for driving instructors. And the amount of people coming into the industry is not as high as you would think. And we have lost a number of ADIs through natural wastage of ones who've decided that their health is not ever going to be, as far as they're concerned, strong enough to deal now with the COVID, which could go on for another 2 years as far as they're concerned. So they've bowed out, or age has negated them doing any more training, or they've just decided they've had enough. So there are people we've lost at the top end, and there's not as many people coming in the bottom end to replace the ones that have gone at the top end. So the register has actually gone down. I don't know about exact figures, but it has gone down quite significantly. So the amount of work out there is getting quite high. And I would say to you now that you want to review your prices, because you have got a lot more time per lesson preparation than you've ever had, with the cleaning of the vehicle, the materials you've got to purchase. You've got the phone calls you've got to make. You've got to give all of your clients a lot more intensive what are we trying to say?
Well, it's pure economics, Howard. We are now going to go into a demand market with, as you say, limited supply. So that is reason enough to raise prices. It doesn't make you, the evil kind of profiteer, because the justification for the price increase is actually the limitation of supply, due to the attrition of instructors out of the industry, due to the demand for lessons and more people wanting lessons, but also your costs have gone up, as Howard said, with things like PPE as well. And we find sometimes when we do talk to members that they weren't truly factoring in all their costs anyway, and there was a big argument for a price increase pre-COVID. So not only has that got to be taken into consideration, that people just weren't charging enough for the value of what they offered and to cover all the costs that they had. And if you sit down and really go through every single cost attributed to your driving school, we've always maintained that it should be above £32 an hour to cover all the real costs of running a real driving school business or riding school business. The other thing that's going to have to change post-COVID, and really should have changed pre-COVID as a risk mitigation measure, as well as a measure to help you build your business, is it's not just changing what you charge, the amount, it's also changing how you charge. Because a hand-to-mouth existence is extremely risky. Now, consciously or subconsciously, we've known that for a long time. And some trainers have made the move to working out ways of contracting longer term revenues from pupils by selling packages, for example. But more of the industry needs to move to that now. And I think more of the industry will move to that now, because that massive risk has come home to roost. So I think, look at your pricing, look at your pricing strategy, look at what you charge and how you charge, and actually also look at how people can pay you. Is it easy to pay you? If there are easy ways for people to pay. Look at selling packages, because that contracts longer term revenue to you. And if you're going to do things like that, obviously look at your T&Cs and make sure that that you have sufficient T&Cs in place to protect you should suddenly somebody wander off in the middle of the package. Make sure that you have that revenue in your kitty rather than walking off with the client as well.
The price, just to carry on what you're saying there, Carly, the price per hour for running a average diesel vehicle at the moment, the cost to run that vehicle is working out somewhere in the region of £11.80 an hour. So if you're charging 15 quid for your lessons, then think again straight away. If you're charging 20 quid, you're still on a hand-to-mouth existence. You really do need to up these prices up now, because we could have other lockdowns coming down our way. We don't know. We're talking about COVID, but we have also, the government are now saying, although industry have been talking about COVID and everything's being centered around COVID, we cannot rule out, and we now have to think of other viruses that can affect us, even like the flu virus, which is more mundane, but it still sweeps across the country, knocks out members of staff. It causes all sorts of problems. It's obviously driving instructors have the same problem as well, because again, we're in close environment. So we need to be able to have money available for us to live off and to have sort of a bit of fat around us now to live with in these environments. As we find in winter comes up, the medical people have already said, although we are vaccinating ourselves against COVID now and we could be okay, the winter comes along, it's like to bring other strains of other viruses. So it's not COVID thoughts we need now, it's virus thoughts we need to be thinking now. So
I think it's an overall risk management perspective that perhaps some industries have never had until COVID. And there is the road risk element that people have always been conscious of in this industry, but perhaps not the cognizance of what the business risks are and how do you protect against those. And we've done a webinar on the risks to a driving school business that you can catch up on in the academy. But COVID has made us really think about where are our vulnerabilities and weaknesses and how important it is to shore up against those in future. And financially, that is things like keeping some operating capital in the bank, because as we've seen, you can't wholly rely on government bailouts to help you out. They might not be sufficient. So a lot of SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, will keep at least 3 to 6 months, if not to a year, cash reserves, working capital on account for these contingencies, for these issues that hit their business. Now, You might say that's not possible now, but again, that's another reason to look at raising prices to enable you to have that level of profit on top of all of your costs. And once you've paid yourself some level of income, that you can put that buy in a business account as contingency cash to see you through another crisis. Of course, we're looking at doing things again. We're reintroducing an income protection scheme with another provider that offers a better package. We're looking at other things like sickness cover, health cover, all of those kind of things. So those might also be things that people want to look at to mitigate their risk. But certainly things like having some working capital to see you through is a good idea, and achieving that by looking at, you know, what you charge and how you charge it.
I think we need to move on now, if we may.
Yep.
So if you could change slides then, please, Tom, if you would, please. So testing kits, there was a question before we started the webinar about, well, we had an email yesterday saying, could someone mention about the testing kits? They're available from tomorrow. There's the link that you would need to have a look about the frequently asked questions about the testing of pupils. Again, I'll reiterate, you cannot make anybody take a test. You've got no grounds to be able to do that at all, and it would be a very, very dodgy wicket if you did. But you can ask, you can decide who gets into your vehicle by doing it diplomatically and saying, I did it, we need to see a result of a test, because you can stop someone getting in the car for having big feet if you want, because it's a road safety issue, or they're too tall for your car. It's a road safety issue. But you can't make someone take a test for a virus, because that is a silent thing that you cannot be physically seen, and therefore there's too much bone of conjecture there. So you can't make them do it. You can only say, I would like to see a result, please, to keep my working environment.
You can set a policy as a school that is no test, no lesson, but that is entirely at your discretion. We've been asked this week if we get behind things like petitions to, maybe mandate testing for driving lessons. The reality is you're all private businesses. So if we did that, there would be others out there who would not be happy that they were almost having choice taken off them about, being able to actually teach at all. So our advice, if you look in the FAQs, is if you do want to mandate a policy for your driving school that is no test, no lesson, you have to think about the economic consequences of that, the reputational issues of that, and the fact that people may walk to other organisations for their training. And you also have to look at your terms and conditions to make sure that's clear. Now, your issue is going to be not with new pupils, because if you bring in new terms and conditions and you're clear with them when you're selling the product that it's no test, no lesson, that's okay to some degree. If you've got current pupils, that's an alteration to terms and conditions in which they signed on with you. So you have to be very careful about instituting those and make sure they're on board. So that's why Howard has suggested a more diplomatic route than a change in policy completely. You also have to think about the practicalities of a no test, no lesson policy across the board, because even with kits being given out to school and college and university age children and pupils and employees, there's still not necessarily going to be sufficient kits around for people to access these tests as regularly as their weekly or sometimes twice a week driving lessons as well.
Yeah, good point. Good point. But moving on to driving test waiting times, we know they're long. The situation with the DVSA when they go back on the 22nd for testing on the 22nd of April is they are going back to 6 tests a week instead of 5, which they're doing before. They will not revert back to 7 just yet. The situation of roving examiners where they have really bad waiting times, where they have roving examiners that will go across the country, is still not going to happen. They're not going to allow examiners to travel from one test centre to another across the country to help out. So that's not going to help. But they have taken on a substantial number of new examiners which are being trained at the moment. But even when they've come out of the training school, they have to go through a probation time in their test centres before they are let loose completely on their own. So it's going to take a long time to get the whole cohort of examiners that they've got trained up. They can't do all of them in one go. So we've seen the adverts for join the DVSA as an examiner. That's been very successful for them. They had, I think it was 1,500 applicants, I think they had, for 150 jobs. So they've taken on the 150 examiners. but they can't train all 150 at the same time. So this strategy of thinking, oh, they've got more examiners now, they're not all going to go live all at the same time. So it's going to be a drip feed, as for want of a better expression, to get the test times down. And obviously the booking times will vary from different areas of the country as more examiners become available in different areas of the country. So the test waiting times, they will start to come down. The DVSA are now planning on strategies to reduce times, include possibly working later into the evenings. With now we've got lighter evenings. I can remember in 2011, I think it was 2011, 2012, in Surrey, we had a horrendous lengthy time for driving tests. They were creeping up to 16, 17 weeks. And they started doing them right up till 7 o'clock at night with volunteer examiners. So it is possible that that might start taking shape, and also weekend tests as well. Whether they'll pick up Sunday tests again, I'm not sure, but it's possible they'll do more at the weekends than what they were doing before to try and get as much scope as they can out of a working week. But a lot of it will have to be done with volunteer examiners rather than saying to examiners, you will work these hours. So it will be pockets in the country that will be better than others at times. We do know that not all of the test centres are open. Most of them are now. I think about 90%, 92, 93% of the test centres are open. There was a phenomenal problem in getting them open due to landlord issues, which we don't know the ins and outs of. They keep it quite close to their chest, but there's landlords stopping them from going on site, which was keeping them closed, which was also part of the reason why some of the waiting rooms couldn't open. But we now have got most, I think it's 292 waiting rooms are now open. Further 29 opened up, were ready to be opened up from yesterday. So they'll be ready on the 12th. So most of the test centres you go to now will have the waiting times, the waiting rooms will be open. The driving test and the standards check procedures, they'll take place from the 22nd. We're still on the driving test, have the tests returned if the candidate produces serious or dangerous faults or meets 16 driving faults on the test. That's to try to reduce the exposure, but that is probably not going to go away for quite some time. That's something the DVSA will hold on to for quite some time. Also, the situation of the PDIs getting tests in on their pink badges, that they will be a priority in terms of the standards check situation, and then it will be done not necessarily on those who've waited the longest. It'll be those that come up due to the crystal reports showing that they need to be reviewed, the ADI needs to be reviewed, and then it will go into the standard procedure of those that need to be seen next. I haven't had a standards check now for nearly 7 years, not because I've been missed, it's just because the COVID operation, things have taken more of a priority, and I'm expecting to get a standards check sometime between now and the end of the year. So there'll be others that have probably been gone slightly longer than I have. Don't worry about the situation with your DBS. We've had a lot of ADIs, and I mean a lot of ADIs, have come back and said that my badge is due for renewal, and my standards, my DBS will be out of date before the renewal. Don't worry about your DBS until you're invited by the DVSA to renew it. Okay, so don't go to an organisation and get a DBS check, because they will only take the DBS checks from one organisation only. So don't think you're doing the noble thing and sending them a DBS voluntarily. You don't need to. Only renew your DBS when the DVSA asks you to do so. So if we can move on, Tom, if you will. And we come to questions. We've got a few here. And so I should just start with Maggie. The date being given for applying for size 4. Have we got a date for that, Kylie? Because I've got to be honest, I haven't seen a date for that yet.
No, I just did a quick rescan, as I do every day, of the news channels as well, to make sure there's not any breaking news on that. No, it's still saying late April. You'll be able to apply from late April, the end of April, that is thought to be, until the 31st of May. for this latest size. So what I would advise is obviously keep your eye on our news channels, but also really good channels to look at Money Saving Experts, scan the news channels, just tap in, fourth size grant, and what will happen, Google automatically ranks news items or fresh news higher than anything else. So, or do a search on news on Google. And when you've got Google up, you can see what you can search on. You can actually choose to search on news. And if you search on those search terms, then hit news, you'll see the latest articles. And, newspapers like the Telegraph, iNews, and people like that are pretty good at getting that news out as soon as it hits. So just keep an eye out for the opening on that.
Another question from Maggie: is there an update on the DVSA giving back ADIs a year on their badges with the lost time? That is not possible. We've been to the DVSA and tried to get this done, and it goes. We've actually been to Baroness Vere, who's the Minister for Roads. The situation is that due to the cast in statute in the Road Traffic Act 1988, the DVSA is unable to give any refunds except for circumstances of bad health. So they can't refund trainee badges that have expired or haven't been used, or anything to do with the ADI badge. They are aware it needs repealing, the law needs repealing. They have tried to get parliamentary time for a read for this to be done. And the government has said that because the COVID environment is a more important matter than that at the moment, that they can't get parliamentary time, and it's quite likely we won't get parliamentary time to reread this until 2022. As I understand it, from information I've done a bit of digging and delving, the application just for booking time for Parliament, we as an industry are unable to book any time in Parliament to get a date for a review. It won't be till December to actually put an application in for a time to have it read. So, and it's not likely to get read before April next year, 2022. So there's nothing at this present time that anybody is able to do about refunds for badges. It's cast in the 1988 Road Traffic Act. They didn't foresee anything to do with force majeure, which is the situation we've been in, which has caused this problem. And the law cannot be repealed due to it at the moment in time. Will a copy of the presentation be available to download? Tom, is that possible? Or it can be reviewed, can't it? Sorry, this presentation will be in the Academy. So when it's uploaded to the Academy, you'll be able to access the Academy. It's free to access, and you'll be able to see it on there. Okay, I just lost myself on there now. What have I done? Right, okay.
A lot of questions about the lateral flow tests and things. Just a reminder that we've produced some FAQs on those that you'll find on the website. So have a look at those. As we said, Tara's just put the link up about that. Again, it's not just a case of asking pupils to do it. If you're going to mandate it, that needs to go into terms and conditions. You need to be pragmatic about the availability of these tests as well, and how they're going to be used. If they have, if you're in an intense moment of training with that pupil and they're seeing you every day, it's going to be, or every day for 2 weeks, it's going to be difficult to do that. But by all means, have a look at those FAQs. That has got some information on where kits can be obtained from. Your pupils may be able to get up to 2 tests a week because they're at school, university, or college. And obviously, as Howard suggested, you might want to suggest they use those for pre-driving lessons or share the result with you. Obviously, that result is confidential to them, so they're under no mandate to share that result with you. Then also you can possibly get them yourself from your local authority who's distributing kits to those who work from home. But those kits are intended for you, the person who is working from, not from home, the person who's working in a occupation that's not possible to work from home. They're not intended to be kits to be given out to your pupils necessarily, so they might not have enough stock of those, but it's worth checking with your local authority if you can get hold of those. You can also buy lateral flow testing kits in bulk. There's a lot of providers out there who are flogging them at the moment, so it's up to you to have a look at those and look at the best pricing and whether it's worth it to buy those in bulk. But bear in mind what we said about not forcing people to do it, and certainly under no circumstances should there be any physical interaction with any administering of tests by any instructors at all, because that will come under fit and proper review.
The question I have here is, can I purchase a handheld vacuum cleaner to be used solely for the purpose of cleaning the vehicle and offset it as a business expenditure? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Anything that's to do with running your business is a bit like stationery. You can offset that. You can offset postage. Anything that is used to run the business that is for the sole purpose of running the business can be used and offset against tax liabilities. It's all right for you to do that. I'll be very surprised if an accountant started arguing about that, because in the regime we've got now, we're shouting keep clean all the time. It'd be very, very remiss of them not to allow it. So I'm certain it is allowable. Who's legally responsible for cleaning the vehicle when doing fleet training and using a client company vehicle? Really and truly, Dennis, that's going to be down to you when you go back into the company and ask them what their policy is on that. You'd still need to be wiped down between changeover of drivers if you are doing demonstrations drives, but the initial clean should really be done by the company, as they own the vehicle and it's their duty of care. As when you go on site, you walk into their health and safety policy as a visitor or a contractor. So it is their responsibility to ensure that vehicle is kept clean at the outset. Is it okay to keep record of customers' lateral flow results if they have shared it with me? Emma, I'd suggest you don't. I know you probably have to be registered with the ICO, but what you would probably want to do is just see it and let them have it back. I would not keep the result, but you could probably have, if you've got an audit and you've got a form for all of your clients, that you can just tick a box to say it's been seen and it was seen as being satisfactory, rather than actually keep the result. It's going to be a bit of a problem with you storing that sort of information, because it's got to be kept under lock and key and secure and everything else.
Yes, I think it's any health data comes under special category data, and that, yeah, you have to be a lot more careful with that.
Yeah, a lot more. Yeah, right. That's right, Tommy. We came back this last week before last, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. NFT home testing kits. Can we order today in preparation? We've got the. We've put up the link for it on our. Tom's just put it back up again. So that's the link to get hold of the lateral flow testing kits. Now what we got here? Oh God, it's gone again. Just a minute.
Yeah, you can get them there, folks. Here's mine, because I have a school-age child, so they come pretty rapidly. So you should be able to get your local authority ones very quickly as well.
Okay, can pupils or pupils' parents or guardians allowed to accompany on driving lessons? Yes, private practice is allowed to take place now on non-essential journeys. They really shouldn't be in the back of your car, though, if you are doing, not the moment, if you're doing driving lessons. I would keep that clear, because the amount of aerosols added to the reservoir is going to be quite substantial if you do that. So it's best that you don't have accompanying people in the back of the car. The DVSA won't allow it on the driving test to have ADIs in the back. So although, yes, it's an advantage for your student to have the extra weight in the back, ready for any eventuality of an examiner still being supervised, because that still has to take place. But for you to have anybody in the back of your car is probably frowned upon at the moment in time. I think probably better you come back and ask us about that later on. We can put that to the DVSA and ask them when they think that can happen and when that should happen again. But at this moment, I'll be quite clear in saying don't do that right at the moment.
You could use in-car cameras if you had a parent who wanted to have an inside view of the lesson, as long as everybody was giving permission for that lesson to be filmed and you were happy to share that footage. And that could be another way, if a parent was particularly keen to know what was going on in lessons, that they could have a bird's eye view of that.
I've got a question here from Mr. Panesar, who said, could you please explain the size 4 grant again, please, Carly?
Oh God, now I'm going to have to go and remind myself of the details of that. What I will do is I will ask for in our newsletter this week instead, rather than me prolong the webinar now, for an update on that. But it is on the website, the driving.org website, in the COVID information as well. You'll find a summary of what's in the size grant, because I know we updated that financial information recently on there. Otherwise, I'm just going to be reading from a newspaper article, which, you know, we've got more information on our website than that. So apologies for that one. It's obviously going to go, I think it's at 70% for the 4th grant. And the eligibility criteria is more or less the same as it has been for the others. But we're just waiting for the obviously the more finite detail on that one.
Judith has a question. I'm getting a lot of pupils who use an app that gets cancellation slots for driving tests. Do you know how these work, and why do they get cancellation slots before anyone else, especially with the waiting list being around 5 to 6 months? To be honest with you, Judith, I don't know much about these apps at all. When we talk to the DVSA, they always say that if a test is cancelled by them, they will give an alternative date. If it is not appropriate for the use of the vehicle or for the student at the time, then they go back into the booking system and they get whatever they can. How these people with the app can get these dates, I do not know. I've got no idea, because it's certainly not done through the business side of the business portal, that's for sure. The ADI, the DVSA have made that very clear, that commercial organizations for third-party selling cannot get into that system. So I'm afraid I cannot answer that question for you. I don't know how that happens.
We have raised this issue because we can see a company called quicktest.co.uk and others coming into the fray. So we have raised it with DVSA and asked them what can be done about, you know, chucking these people out of the system. So they're gonna have a look at this issue and see what they can do to strengthen, you know, their firewall, as it were. Not the term to be applied necessarily to that process, but strengthen the ability to not have those people come into the system in the first place.
Maggie's asking a question at Perspex partition. Someone contacted me last week as they'd seen, when they were last training, an ADI in a car with a Perspex partition inside the training vehicle between the ADI and the pupil. It's down to the insurer whether it's accepted. Is it a safety issue? It is a safety issue. When we got the wind of this taking place, ADI started buying these without advice, and the insurance companies were saying, we're not going to insure the vehicle because some of them were a problem to the airbag going off on the driver's side. The other thing that took place is when we had an ADI trial one for us, he did it at fading light when people's headlights are on, and he said when he looked left at a T-junction, all he could see was the reflection of the headlights coming from the cars from the right in the perspex. So he couldn't actually see through the perspex to see what was coming from the left. The DVSA then put their sixpence in and said, we're not going to do tests in cars with those up because of the flow of air through the vehicle. So really and truly, they are not, I would not do anything to invest in those. Probably not a good idea. Taxi drivers is not so bad, but you have got the problem of looking for what's coming from the left with those perspex, because they pick up the reflections from traffic coming from the right. So that's the answer to that. On a part 3 training, can I sit in the back while the PDI is conducting a lesson? Is this allowed? Because if you are on the what they call it, additional supervision part for the ADI 21, then there has to be some form of supervision done. But I do believe that the DVSA have relaxed that for in class at the moment, that you can do a classroom session with them instead of being in the back of the car with them. And I'll have to check on that for you, Phil, but I'm not completely, if you don't mind emailing me, howardredwood@driving.org, to remind me to ask the question. But I've got a feeling that that's being relaxed at the moment on the additional supervision part of the training license. And it's being allowed to be used as a classroom session, and that marked down as part of the 20%. But if you can just email me or remind me to check with DVSA for you, and I'll get you an answer back, please. So it's howardredwood@driving.org, please. That's all the questions we've got here at the moment. If anybody has any other questions for us, they can contact the ADIs at support@driving.org. If you have any questions for membership, it is help@driving.org. So when you do phone us, could you please listen to the advice on the answer phone to get the correct people? Otherwise, you're going to get taken around the houses. Because bear in mind, most of us are working from home, and if you come to us working from home, we can't all put you through. We haven't got a switchboard at home to be able to put you through. So if you could listen to the options, that would help. But it's support for the driving instructors and it's help for the membership. Okay, all right. So, and cost of no other questions here. I think we're pretty much finished and wrapped up. It's gone on a little bit longer than we wanted it to. I hope we haven't held people up. I believe we've got other webinars will start coming online very shortly indeed. But if you want to know what is going on in terms of courses that we're delivering, I believe we've got a email alert coming out very shortly in the next day or so with some dates for the standards check preparation. There's 4 sessions of that, and that's going to be another series of that starting again next month. So if you would like to get involved in that, you can get in touch with us on that.
Yeah.
Okay, anything to add, Carly?
Yeah, just also in the meantime, obviously, go and revisit the free COVID post-lockdown toolkit that we've put in there for members on the website. It's really useful. You've got a really good risk assessment matrix that Howard has developed for helping you, risk assess every pupil. So some of your pupils are higher risk than others. You might want to triage pupils, all that kind of thing. And so there's some really good webinars and training courses in there. So go and refamiliarize yourself with that and just visit our webinars, our past ones that are on the DIA Academy as well, because there's lots of other back to business type webinars, helping to get your business back on the road. It might be useful for you to have a quick look at those before you go back to training as well. But other than that, I just wish everybody good luck and make hay whilst the sun shines out there when you get back to training, because we all know now it can be quite an unstable environment. So that's why we put so much store by making that hay and charging what you can charge and doing what you can do to recoup that income whilst you can.
We are here to help you, so please get in touch. Okay. Take care, everybody. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.